In Star Wars, when a light side user and a dark side user open up a Jedi and Sith holocron at the same time, the two holocrons merge together and grant the user answers to any questions they desire. We see this in Star Wars Rebels, when Ezra Bridger and Maul work together to open the holocrons and ask the question each of them desire the answers to. Today we will explore what may have happened if Anakin got both a Jedi and a Sith holocron and tried to open both of them. So let's get right into it. Our story begins inside of the Jedi Temple, a few weeks after Ahsoka Tano left the Order. Anakin was still trying to find a new purpose in both the war and in his life as a Jedi, as the last few years were spent with Ahsoka by his side through all of it. She'd become like a sister to him, and Anakin quickly learned just how much he enjoyed playing the role of a mentor or a master. And now, she was just gone. There were many reasons for this: the bombing of the temple by Barriss, the refusal of the Jedi to trust her, the need for the Republic to try her as a citizen, not as a Jedi. But all of it tied back to the exact same thing: the Clone War. This war that seemingly never got closer to ending resulted in Ahsoka leaving, and there were more than a few times where Anakin was afraid that the war would cause him to lose Obi-Wan or Padme, not to mention the hundreds of Jedi and clone troopers he personally knew that had fallen. At this point, Anakin wanted to end this war to protect the people he was closest to, but he had no idea how to actually do it. He desperately needed an answer. Later that afternoon, Anakin would find Obi-Wan in the temple, and he would confide these feelings to his former master, asking why despite all of the victories, the war seems no closer to ending than it did on Geonosis. Anakin knew there was more information to be had, and Obi-Wan had no reason not to trust him. He asked Anakin if he remembers the name Sidious, and Anakin nodded, saying it's the name Dooku brought up to be the true Sith Master in control of the galaxy. But Anakin said they don't actually believe Dooku, do they? And so Obi-Wan said that every day this war goes on is further proof that Dooku told the truth. It's extremely possible that this being called Darth Sidious has infiltrated the highest levels of the Republic and is secretly pulling the strings of the war. Anakin asked how much Palpatine knows of this, and Obi-Wan just shrugged, saying that every time Windu brings it up, the Chancellor just sort of brushes it off as an old Jedi legend. He says he's not interested in chasing ghosts. Anakin couldn't really blame him. He knew Palpatine had so much on his plate with the enemies that they could see, so searching for a Sidious is something he just doesn't have time for. Anakin knew that Palpatine was working tirelessly to end this war, and today, after thanking Obi-Wan for trusting him, Anakin decided he was going to do whatever it takes to find out if this Darth Sidious is real, and he will find out who he is. But of course, that was much easier said than done, and Anakin would end up right back on the front lines, fighting battle after battle, winning most of them, until he was wrapping up a space battle above Felucia. Rex would inform Anakin that the Council was attempting to contact him, so Anakin took the message aboard his Venator. And the Council would inform Anakin of something he'd never expected. The Jedi Temple has received a distress signal from a ship that once belonged to a Jedi that's been gone for many years at this point, Qui-Gon Jinn. Yoda said that this is likely nothing more than an old signal Qui-Gon once used acting up, but they need Anakin to go and make sure it is shut down for good so it cannot be tapped into. Unfortunately, the signal was coming from the ancient Sith world of Moraband. Anakin understood, and a part of him wondered if somehow this could possibly be Qui-Gon. It seemed impossible, but still, the moment Anakin received the Council's transmission, a chill was settling beneath his skin. Even as the blue tunnel of hyperspace streaked past the viewport, his thoughts lingered on Qui-Gon, a name that felt more like a ghost than a man. The Jedi had been gone for around a decade, and yet the signal was real. Anakin stood at the edge of the command bridge, arms crossed, the usual fire behind his eyes subdued into a quiet wariness. Beside him, Rex was glancing over, noticing the silence but not saying anything. The rest of the squad going on this mission, Fives, Jesse, and Kix, gathered near the briefing table, passing thoughts between them. Most of them had never even heard of Moraband, and as the ship dropped out of hyperspace, the unease only deepened within them. The planet had no defense grid, no life signs, no movement at all, yet something in the Force rippled like a cold breath down Anakin's neck. Fives muttered something about cursed worlds, and Kix scanned the readouts once more, searching for radiation or toxins, but it was safe. Anakin would give the order to descend, and so the group moved into the planet, inside of a gunship, and Anakin knew this was not a rescue mission. It had to be something else. Something was calling to him, as if this entire mission was specifically set up for him. The group landed, tracing the signal to an old building that looked to be a hangar. Anakin entered first, instructing the clones to stay outside and make sure no one is following them. He feels like this is a trap. And the moment Anakin stepped into the old hangar, the massive, rusted doors slammed shut, sealing him in. A violent screech of metal cut through the silence, and outside, Rex and the others immediately sprang into action, pounding on the doors, calling through comms. but there was no response. It was as if the very force inside of the hangar had cut them off from reality. Rex ordered Fives to get to their gunship and prepare to fire the missiles. But inside of the building, Anakin pressed forward, hand tightening around his lightsaber, but not yet igniting it. For some reason, he felt at peace, as if something were telling him that he's not in danger. The hangar funneled into a staircase, carved into stone, leading him into an underground tomb. At the base, a single figure was kneeling in the center of a circular chamber. Draped in black, the person's flesh was pale and cracked, eyes sunken, yet shining with devotion. The walls around him were etched with things from Anakin's life: the twin suns on Tatooine, his lightsaber, the necklace he gave Padme, the face of Ahsoka, all of it drawn in charcoal and ash. Anakin finally ignited his blade, asking who he is and what is going on here. The cultist raised his head, and a grin broke across his face. He spoke with a voice that sounded like broken glass, calling Anakin the Hand of the Sith Eternal, the one who will burn with the balance. Long have he and other Sith cultists been studying Anakin, watching him from afar, understanding that he is the one who will help the Sith rise from their long exile in the end. He will rise above all Sith before him, including Darth Sidious. When Anakin heard this name, he pointed the blade right at the chin of this cultist, demanding to know who Sidious was, and something in the cultist's face changed. The cultist said he was not supposed to come here. Anakin was supposed to go on this journey alone. The cultist said he couldn't help himself, and he brought Anakin a gift. And with a serene smile, he drove a ceremonial dagger into his own gut, whispering to Anakin that he will now begin his journey into the dark. As he collapsed, a pyramid-shaped holocron clattered from his robes. It was pulsing with dark crimson light, as if sensing a new master, and it was already beginning to open. Anakin reached out instinctively, and the room around him changed. Stone melted into stars. Anakin stood amidst a black void, where the galaxy spun slowly around him. A voice spoke in language he did not know, and yet he understood. It showed him a dark figure, hooded, hidden in plain sight. It showed him the Jedi blinded and crumbling, and it showed himself, eyes blazing, surrounded by fire and kneeling masses. He felt the power. Anakin snapped out of it when a missile slammed into the hangar door, and the clone squad ran in, asking Anakin if he was alright. Anakin hid the closed holocron in his robes, saying all of this was a false alarm. It seemed that Qui-Gon did once have a ship here, and this now dead man must have tried to use it to escape before finding out it was broken down. He told them it's time to get out of here, and when Anakin was finally back on Coruscant, he would stay awake all night, looking at the Sith holocron, remembering the drawings, wondering if the answers he was looking for were inside of it, thinking about the Sith, wondering about his destiny, everything closing in his mind. Perhaps the power necessary to end this war was contained in the holocron. Anakin had to stop himself from opening it, and soon he would find himself alone in the Jedi archives, learning everything he could about Sith holocrons. And when the sun started to come up on Coruscant, Anakin nearly fell asleep in one of the holobooks when he made his first real discovery. It was nothing more than a footnote, as it was only a rumor, but the note told Anakin that if a Jedi and a Sith holocron were opened together, then they will be drawn together and they will merge with one another. And when they indeed merge, the Force will grant whoever opens them the answer to any question the person seeks. But the only known way to do this was to have both a light side user and a dark side user open them up together. Anakin felt some hope drain away from him, as he quickly realized that no dark side user would be helping him with this. But he quickly realized something else. If there was any one person in the galaxy who could access both the light and the dark at the exact same time, it would be him. And so Anakin would dedicate himself to finding that perfect balance in the Force, while also trying to manage being the leading face of the war, being as good of a husband as possible, and hiding from everyone he knows that he is in possession of a Sith holocron. Easy. And so in the weeks that followed Moraband, Anakin's obsession consumed him. Between missions and meetings he didn't care for, he vanished into the shadows of the Jedi Temple, retreating to his quarters, where he'd hidden both the Sith holocron and a Jedi holocron, lifted discreetly from the restricted archives. He wasn't allowed in there, but the Jedi were too busy to notice one missing holocron. Ancient holobooks and fragmented datapads were now in his room, each one confirming the same frustrating truth. Holocron fusion requires two people, one of light, one of dark. But Anakin refused that conclusion. Every spare moment was spent dissecting the teachings of both sides, immersing himself in Jedi philosophy before plunging into Sith doctrine, trying to walk the line between serenity and passion, control and freedom, hope and fear. He pushed his mind into meditation so deep, it bordered on hallucination, sometimes spending hours suspended in the Force, trembling on the edge of collapse. The Jedi Council could feel these tremors in the Force, but they blended right in with the darkness from the war. They thought nothing of it. Still, The holocrons were resisting Anakin. One of them would always open, the other one would always stay cold. He began creating dual training rituals. One side of his room bathed in soft temple light, where he meditated on compassion and peace. The other side would see no light, and he would hold the Sith holocron, summoning memories of pain and rage. He would shift between them, trying to maintain both energies within himself. Anakin taught himself to trigger his emotions like switches: anger at the war, love for Padme, loss over his mother. And yet, every time he tried to open both holocrons simultaneously, one would seal as the other would bloom. He began to hear whispers in his sleep, words and languages long dead, as if the Force itself were breaking apart within him. He was waking up angry, and in battle, Anakin was beginning to lose control of himself as the rage was taking over, and this rage would seep into Anakin's personal life. When Clovis reinserted himself back into Padme's life, Anakin snapped, and Padme was afraid of him. So once alone in the evening, Padme's words would echo like thunder in his mind. Soft, trembling, terrified, she'd seen the shift in Anakin, the violence simmering beneath his skin, and she no longer looked at him like the man she once fell in love with. After the confrontation with Clovis, something inside her had cracked. She said she loved him, but she didn't recognize him right now. And maybe, Anakin thought, he didn't recognize himself either. He would sit alone in his quarters, the Sith and the Jedi holocrons put away for the first time, as he was not trying to open them. He was just feeling into the Force, feeling for the peace he no longer could find. The ache of Padme slipping away was there. The guilt was clawing at his ribs. The hate he had for the war, frustrations with the Jedi Council, with Dooku's cruelty, but beneath that was desperate, burning hope that maybe he could still have a future with her, that if he could understand the Force in its entirety, he could finally protect the ones he loved without losing himself in the process. As the pain and the love fought like a storm inside of him, something snapped and yet aligned all at once. A tremble shook the room, the holocrons lifted, slowly shimmering with opposing energy. Anakin didn't even try to do it, and finally, he unlocked it, and without command, they spiraled towards each other, two halves of the Force twisting into one. A soft, deafening hum swelled as they met and melted into a single form, cracking with light and with shadow. Anakin opened his eyes, and his breath caught. The fusion was finally happening, a symbol of duality glowing in his eyes, waiting for Anakin to ask whatever question he seeks. For the first time in galactic history, Anakin was able to simultaneously open a Jedi and a Sith holocron together. Anakin allowed the Force to accept him, and he asked the holocrons the question he'd been burning to ask for so long. Who is Darth Sidious? The moment Anakin asked the question, the fused holocrons surged with blinding energy, and the room around him dissolved into a rushing current of sensation, light, noise, motion. He stood atop a skyscraper on Coruscant, under a storming sky. Far below, the city pulsed with chaos, and he saw him. Chancellor Palpatine with his robes torn, eyes wide, running from something. Panic etched into the old lines of his face. He wasn't regal or composed like usual. He was terrified. And behind him, a dark figure gave chase, cloaked in shadows, its form shifting, like some sort of dark entity. Anakin moved with them, following the chase as it burst into the Chancellor's office. The doors shattered inward, and inside, bodies of Windu, Fisto, Kolar, and Sazy lay across the floor, smoke curling from their robes. Palpatine continued to flee, now stumbling out of the window, as the vision took them into the grand halls of the Jedi Temple. It was horrific. Clones slumped in corners, lightsaber wounds stabbed into them. Jedi sprawled in unnatural positions, as they were filled with blaster bolts. The walls were torn from saber wounds and blaster marks. The dark figure was gliding through the carnage like it belonged there. Anakin couldn't see who it was. He could only see the darkness. And finally, the scene shifted one final time. A quiet, eerie mirror cave, jagged obsidian and still water, were beneath Anakin's feet. The chase ended. Palpatine was gone. Only the dark figure stood at the center, and it turned slowly. Anakin tried to find a face. He was so close, but as he leaned in, the doors to his temple quarters opened, and voices screamed out at Anakin, telling him to stop, to let go. Yoda, Mace Windu, and Obi-Wan were here, and they felt this awakening deep in the temple. Anakin got closer and closer to the dark entity in this vision, and when he finally pulled down the hood to the figure, Obi-Wan used the Force to pull Anakin away, right as the two holocrons exploded, shattering the room as Obi-Wan barely shut the door, with Anakin collapsing safely next to him. Anakin scrambled to his feet, yelling in frustration that he was so close. Obi-Wan stopped him from getting the answers. Obi-Wan frustratedly yelled back that he just saved Anakin from a painful death, and he demanded to know what he was thinking. So Anakin sighed in frustration, and he unraveled the past few months and the journey he's been on. Yoda, Windu, and Obi-Wan would pull Anakin into a meditation room, demanding to know all of the details about what he'd been doing and what he saw. When Anakin said he fused a Jedi and Sith holocron together, the Masters were astonished. Anakin would describe what he saw, saying that this entity of Sidious was chasing Palpatine through horrible areas of the galaxy. Jedi were dead, clones turned on the Jedi, blue blades were clashing against each other on a fiery world. Anakin said he doesn't understand, but he thinks the Chancellor is in danger from Darth Sidious. Yoda and Windu just glanced at each other after hearing Anakin's description of these visions, and they asked Anakin if it's possible that his mind blocked off whatever the answer could actually be, that Darth Sidious is Chancellor Palpatine. Anakin shook his head, but unfortunately, it did begin to make some sense. His vision would show him the darkness chasing Palpatine, and Anakin realized it had to be him under the hood. He didn't have the words, but Windu actually felt some pride for Anakin in the moment. Windu wanted nothing more than to end this war, and if he thought this holocron fusion was possible, he probably would have tried it himself. But deep down, he knew that Anakin was the only one capable of doing this, and he looked to Yoda as he said they must go and arrest the Chancellor. The events with Fives' death were still fresh in the mind of the Jedi, and they now knew that Palpatine may be Sidious, and he controlled the inhibitor chips. They would use that against him in the Senate when this is over, and Anakin told the Jedi he must go with them. In this moment, Windu was trusting that Anakin had all the right intentions, so he nodded to him as Windu, Anakin, Yoda, and Obi-Wan would take off to the Chancellor's office, while the rest of the Masters here would lock down the temple. The 4 Jedi entered the Chancellor's office in silence, air humming with tension, the storm outside mirroring the gathering within. Anakin's heart was pounding, not from fear, but from memory. He'd seen a moment like this before. The bodies in his vision were of other Jedi, but it was still a warning of what could happen here. Palpatine stood at the far end of the room, back turned to the city outside, as if he were waiting for this moment, and when the Jedi entered, he could feel there would be no peace here. It was kill or be killed. And when he spun, his transformation was instant, with an explosion of power, as 2 red blades snapped to life, and the dark side crashed down on the Jedi. But this time the Jedi were ready. Windu met him head on, purple blade locking against the red, in a blast of sparks. Obi-Wan moved in from the side, striking with precise aggression, balanced with his typical defense, while Yoda's green saber blurred through the air, intercepting lightning coming from Sidious's fingers. Anakin hung back, watching every movement, feeling the Force flow through him. There was no hesitation, only purpose in this moment, but he could feel the darkness tugging at him. He had to let it go. He thought of Padme, Ahsoka, Obi-Wan, the clones, and he would fight for them. The duel surged across the office floor. Furniture was shattered. Sidious moved with speed they'd never seen, twisting around like a ghost, every strike fueled by hatred that he'd been waiting to unleash. And as the battle pressed on, the group was driven backwards, out of the shattered windows, and onto the angled rooftop of the executive building. Rain was whipping through the wind, the skyline roared with thunder, as lightsabers clashed above the heart of the Republic. Citizens were flying through the air, and they could see the red, purple, blue, and green sheets slamming into each other. Sidious unleashed lightning in all directions, drawing energy from the storm above, crackling against the blades of his enemies as he leapt towards the edge of a descending shuttle that he'd called to come and save him. With his escape within reach, he sprang for it, flipping over Anakin, only to be caught mid-air by Anakin's blade that sliced through both of Sidious's legs and one of his arms. Sidious tumbled down to the roof, sliding down to a maintenance hatch, landing hard as he would go unconscious from the shock and the pain. The shuttle would leave, and the Jedi would arrest what was left of the Dark Lord, placing him inside of an unescapable Mandalorian vault. With the arrest of Darth Sidious, the invisible strings that held the galaxy in a state of chaos were severed. Separatist leadership was in disarray. Without Sidious to tip the balance or manipulate outcomes, the Republic military advanced swiftly. Coordinate efforts led by Jedi generals and clone commanders pushed through the battlegrounds with strength. Grievous, lacking guidance and reinforcements, was cornered and destroyed in the Outer Rim. Dooku, stripped of his network and left exposed, was captured during a failed retreat from Raxus. In less than a month, the war that had engulfed the galaxy for years came to a sudden end. The HoloNet would erupt, with broadcasts of the Sith manipulation, unraveling a narrative of deception that blinded the Republic and the Separatists alike. For the first time in years, the galaxy could begin to heal. In the days that followed, the Republic was settling down. The Jedi were no longer viewed with suspicion, but as protectors who'd save the truth and the justice when the galaxy needed it. Ahsoka would return to the Order as a Jedi Knight, and this would help make Anakin a Jedi Master. And Anakin, after revealing to Padme the secret trials he endured, the holocrons, the visions, the internal war between darkness and light, would find reconciliation not just with her, but with himself. He walked the edge of darkness and emerged a true Jedi. Their bond, nearly tested and nearly broken, was reforged with honesty, with peace, as they began building back together within the Republic. The Jedi Council, shaken by how close the darkness had come, did begin to reform, learning from the mistakes that nearly doomed the Republic and the Jedi Order. Peace would return, not through the domination of war, but through understanding. Systems would rejoin the Republic willingly. Jedi and Senators worked together to restructure the government, no longer to be beholden to fear. The clones, bred for war, would find new purpose across the galaxy as peacekeepers, defenders of rebuilding worlds. And amidst it all, Anakin, no longer the chosen one bound by prophecy, simply chose to be a Jedi, standing for the light. The Sith cultists would fall away over time, and Anakin was not the savior they once thought he was. He was the chosen one of the Jedi, of a galaxy that was free. And folks, that is our story for today. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. I did. The Rebels episode where Maul and Ezra use the holocrons is super cool. If you haven't watched Rebels, go do it. It's good. I don't know what to tell you. Good show. This was fun. It's a story. I've explored this concept, I think, once before, maybe twice, but for sure once. It was my first ever video that did well. What if Anakin was granted access to the archives? But I wanted to just once again explore this theory and just kind of, I don't know, that video is really old, probably has a horrid microphone, it's probably really, really bad. But yeah, wanted to just go at it again. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know what you thought, and I'll see you in the next video.